Daniella Monet is yet another victim of Nickelodeon, and her tragic story will leave you in shock. It all started when Daniella got a part in Victorious, which was a big hit when it aired. The show was under the production of Dan Schneider, and that's exactly where things went wrong. Dan Schneider doesn't have a good name when it comes to treating child stars appropriately. So it surely wasn't a picnic for Daniella to work with a man like Dan for so long while she was still a teenager and extremely vulnerable. Dan Schneider has faced several allegations of misconduct towards young actors and other members of the crew. Besides, his inclination towards exposing the feet of the young actresses also seemed pretty shady. So right off the bat, Victorious was full of red flags for Daniella, but she continued working on the show. She has recently spoken up about her experiences on the show, and they're no different than what other Nickelodeon stars have said before. Daniella stated that she felt like her character was overly objectified, and there were certain costumes that she had to wear on the show, but they were not age appropriate at all. She further added that she wouldn't even wear these costumes now as an adult. So you can only imagine how uncomfortable it would have been for her to walk around wearing something she felt so objectified in. The sad part is that Daniella was only a teenager at this point, and speaking up wasn't an option for her. It was her first big acting project, and she didn't want to mess things up. But the objectification doesn't just stop there. Daniella has also claimed that there were certain scenes on the show that were a little too racy and really uncomfortable for her to shoot. She revealed a particular scene in which she eats pickles while applying lip gloss, and it's so hard to watch, even as an audience.
I don't like this song. I need you to change it.
Your phone is right next to you.
Yeah, but I have a pickle in this hand and a lip gloss in this one.
Daniella said that when she watched this scene, she was taken off guard, and she didn't want the world to see her like this. She went on and voiced her concerns to Nickelodeon officials and requested them to edit the scene from the final cut. But no one paid any heed to her concerns, and the scene ended up being aired. Dan Schneider was the one who called the shots at Nickelodeon during that time, and although Daniella didn't take a name, fans think that it was him who wanted to air the scenes despite her disapproval. Just imagine that a teenager is asking you not to air the scenes because they make her feel uncomfortable, but you air it anyway. What would she be feeling at that moment, and how much trauma she would have internalized after watching those scenes on TV? But that's not even it, because there are so many scenes in Victorious where her character is shown doing bizarre things like putting her head in a bowl full of mustard or shaving her legs while actually driving on the road.
Do you really have to shave your legs now?
I can't go to school with stubble.
It makes us wonder what exactly the creators were thinking when they wrote this role for Daniella. Some of those scenes are hard to watch even as an audience. Also, it makes us wonder how exactly she would have played a character so bizarre when Daniella herself is such a great actress with so much potential for great roles. If you haven't noticed yet, there's another thing that was so wrong with Daniella's character on Victorious, and most of us never really noticed it. The thing was that every single person poked fun at her constantly and made her feel inferior. Daniella played Trina on the show, and she was Tori's older sister, so most of the attention was on Tori, but there were scenes where Trina was made fun of in such a way that it was embarrassing to watch. In one of the scenes, a fully grown man throws lotion on her face. That doesn't sound so bad, but it doesn't look as innocent as you would have probably thought. The scene was portrayed in such a way that it even made fully grown adults feel bad.
Who are gonna work the grub truck?
Gross!
Trina?
I'm not gonna. Why should I?
So we can only imagine how hard it would have been for Daniella to shoot those scenes. In one of the scenes, we actually see Trina blowing her nose with Tori's underwear, and that's not even as bad as it gets. There are so many scenes that are even more uncomfortable than this, and they genuinely portray Daniella in a bad light, and there's no second opinion on the fact that the creators were doing all of this on purpose. Another tragedy that happened to Daniella on the set of Victorious is that she was never portrayed as being pretty. She was always doing crazy stuff and was being laughed at on the show, but she was never shown as someone who's pretty or attractive. In contrast, Tori was shown as the most beautiful girl on the show. Daniella was a teenager, so not being considered pretty on a show that she probably dreamed about wasn't an ideal situation for her. It would have destroyed her self-esteem because at such a young age, you constantly want to be validated by others. But when they make you feel like you're not good enough or pretty enough, it stays with you for a very long time. That is something that happened to Daniella on Victorious constantly. A lot of the fans think that Trina could have easily played the prettier sister because she obviously was very gorgeous, but the creators didn't think so, and they always downplayed not just Trina's beauty, but her intellect as well. It got to a point when they started portraying Daniella as straight up dumb. But in reality, she's not just a great actress, but also a great human being, and watching her in those scenes was actually painful to the eyes.
I just got these jeans and I gotta stretch them out.
And the trauma doesn't even stop here for Daniella, because her character Trina was constantly left out from parties. She was never invited to any events, and she felt left out. But they never showed her speaking up about it or saying anything to any of the characters. She was the center of the mocking for the most part, and when you're so young and have to do all kinds of bizarre things while 4 people are laughing at you, it isn't as great of an experience as one might think. And the sad part is that they only used Trina in scenes where they had to show something embarrassing, and she was never really accepted in the group like the other members. All of this would have obviously taken a toll on her real life, because child actors often grow up and realize that they were becoming similar to the character they played. And if the same was the case with Daniella, she would have been so miserable. And that's not even it, because her character was shown as someone who has literally no talent and who can't do anything properly. She was constantly humiliated for not being good enough for anything, and her character also had some pretty shady lines.
Oh my god, I am so exhausted. Oh, I am gonna go get in my bed and sleep for at least... Holy jeez, who's this hunk of dude?
This is Moose. We're taking him to karaoke dokie.
I'm in, let's go.
Some fans argue that Daniella is so great that it's almost unfair that she had to play Trina. According to them, she would have slayed as Tori. Some even say that it would have been so great if they got to see her in a stronger role, like a rebellious sister to Tori, who's also really pretty. Fans even go to the extent of saying that there's no way that the creators didn't even consider Daniella for the main role. Some people even believe that they offered her the role, but she declined to play the lead role. There's also a huge gap in the show, because they don't have a proper nerdy girl in the cast. So a lot of people think that Daniella would have made a perfect nerd, with a full-on costume and awkwardness that was a staple for her character. But just a little less embarrassing stuff and a little more comedy. But that would have demanded the creators to actually give her character an arc and a storyline that they didn't really do in Victorious. A lot of people hated Trina and thought her character was cringe, and Daniella had to grow up facing that criticism, despite the fact that she had no control over her dialogue, costumes, or even actions. She was only doing what the creators, specifically Dan Schneider, wanted her to do. And as we already know, he has made Ariana Grande and other child stars do some pretty embarrassing scenes, and Daniella was no exception. There are so many people who wanted Daniella to be doing something more than simply acting dumb, because they knew how convincing her acting was. And if you hated Trina at some point, you already know what we're talking about. According to fans, her career didn't kick off the way she would have wanted, despite having such a big hit at the start of her career. They think that it's mainly because of how much she had to go through while working on Victorious, and the trauma of being a child star never really leaves you, especially if you've worked in a Dan Schneider production. Her days on Victorious seem to be miserable, a lot like her character on the show that doesn't even seem to have any feelings. So playing an aimless character would obviously not be a treat for someone as talented as her. So what are your thoughts about Trina from Victorious? Do you think that she could have been a great main lead? Let us know in the comments, and thanks for watching.